Hello, Raider Nation. Mr. Monticelli here with our next Raider Talk podcast. Really excited to talk with Nick Provenzano. Nick, say hello.
Hi, guys.
So I'm sure all your buddies will know who you are, Nick, but for some folks, some people at Minerva here that might be listening and might not know who you are. So share a little bit about yourself, please, like what grade you're in and what do you do for fun?
Yeah, so as Mr. Monticelli was saying, my name is Nick Provenzano. I am a junior at FHS. I enjoy math and science. I play football and baseball. 3 words that would describe me would be serious, quiet, and kind.
Nice. Thank you. I would share, my connection with Nick is now I'm the principal of Minerva DeLand. Very proud of that. I used to be an assistant principal at the high school, and I help out on the football team as a volunteer defensive line coach / helping out with the offense. So that's my connection with Nick and the football team, and really, really happy to have a strong connection with you, Nick, because you're a very insightful guy.
Yeah,
I got another question for you, but what you just said kind of is interesting in the sense that you said you're a quiet guy. You are a quiet guy.
I am.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I am a very quiet guy. A lot of people would find that true about me.
So how do you muster the courage to do like a podcast? Now, let's be honest, there's not going to be a million people listening to this, but you might have 50, maybe even 100 people that you have no idea who they are listening to this. So how do you go from quiet guy to podcast guy?
So I learned throughout the years that it's okay to be uncomfortable. You should be comfortable being uncomfortable. And I actually learned that from you, Mr. Monticelli. So I kind of factor that into my brain, and we just go from there and just focus on like being in the moment with you and just having a good conversation with you. So
that's awesome. Well, I'm flattered. Thank you. It's one of those, I picked that up from somebody or something else, and you're picking it up. So it means a lot. Thank you for saying that.
Yep.
It is a simple, but such a powerful concept, right? You got to stretch yourself, whether it's physically in the workout room, emotionally. You say, I don't know. Should I go introduce myself to that person? Well, what if I get rejected? What if they think I'm lame? What if they post about me on social media?
Yep.
Or just be comfortable being in that weird, uncomfortable place and say, hey, how's it going?
Mm-hmm.
That's a cool shirt. I like that band too, so whatever the situation is, you got to stretch yourself and get uncomfortable a little bit.
For sure.
That's a great point.
Sure.
So for the people listening to get to know you a little bit better before we get more specific in our conversation, what would be your walk-up song? So for athletes, this is like if you're walking up being introduced to a crowd, whether it's baseball or a boxing match, or if you're a non-athlete, if you're being introduced to a crowd, let's say you're giving a speech to an auditorium full of people. And as you're walking to the stage, what's like a 30-second song clip that you want to be introduced to?
So I had to put some thought into this one. I would say it would be Tom Sawyer by Rush. And
nice. Okay.
Yeah. Just actually, you can honestly pick any part of the song because it sounds so cool, but any 30 seconds would do.
Very cool.
Good. Yep.
Rush. So that's a Canadian rock band from like the 80s, 90s, huh?
Yeah. My dad listens to them and my uncle listens to them, and I just caught on and I just started listening to them too. So, and that's my favorite song that they make. So
that's awesome. Very cool. With the connection with your dad and your uncle. And I'm finding that more and more lately. Maybe I'm just getting old, but there's a lot of teenagers that kind of connect with like 80s, 90s music.
There's not that many out there. Most of them are listening to rap, and I don't really, I don't really like rap that much. So I'm okay. I'm an old school guy.
You're a unicorn then, Nick, in that regard.
Sure.
That's super cool. I would have to say, if I was getting introduced to an auditorium full of people, my walk-up song would be Jimi Hendrix, Voodoo Child, the first 30 seconds of that song.
Yeah.
You got to play it. You got to mess with it and go listen to it.
Okay.
The guitar intro is probably one of the most famous guitar intros ever.
I'm sure if I've listened to it, I'm sure I've heard of it before, but
Absolutely, 1,000%. It's just a really cool. Hendrix is a unique. He's one of the best, probably the best guitar player of all time.
yep.
But he symbolizes like this wild, free spirit, but it's also complete control over his guitar, which is really a cool paradox, you know?
Yeah, I just it's so fascinating to me, like how these guys can just play away and without like messing up. They got to practice for like 10,000 hours at least.
The discipline, for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Hendrix is unique in that regard too, because some people are perfectionists. Well, they're practice to make sure it's the same every time. But Hendrix, they say, even like the best guitarist would say he's the best because he never played the same chord twice, right? So he would play the same general song, same general concepts, but he would be creative and unique and kind of living in the second or living in the moment.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
For sure.
Yep.
So I wanted to talk to you specifically, Nick, about how you're handling like this COVID weird world, right? With school, with sports. I know you're a big athlete where a lot of your life revolves around football and baseball and basketball. In school, the routine of school is so important for everybody, you know? So how are you doing with COVID life?
So, when we shut down in March, I think it was like March 13th, the first 2 months, the first 2 months was pretty much a joyride. Nothing was going on. I'm pretty sure this was like for everyone too. Like all my friends were all happy and we were all good. And then I got hit with some pretty tough anxiety, and the whole month of May and June was just really tough for me. I didn't really feel like doing much. But I got help and I'm feeling a lot better now. So I think COVID has impacted me in a way that like I've never really felt before. Like this is a global pandemic. Like it's never happened before, and we just have to deal with it. And the way I dealt with it, I feel really good about myself. Yeah.
Wow, you said so much in a few words. Number one, you said you just had to deal with it, and that's a huge concept.
Yep.
It's kind of like procrastinating or putting things off is so easy to do, but it just makes things worse, right? So trying to say, okay, recognizing, okay, we got to problem solve this, or not even a problem. It's like a solutions based idea. It's like, okay, there's a solution here. Let's work through it. It's kind of like if you spill milk in your locker, right? And you say, oh man, let's say you spill milk in your locker on a Friday afternoon.
Yeah. And then
like, hey, let's go. We're going wherever. I'm like, okay, I'll clean that up later.
That's disgusting.
You come back Monday and it's like, ooh, that's pretty rancid, right? So you leave it alone. It's too nasty to clean it up. You use your friend's locker for a couple days. And eventually the custodian's like, hey, man, there's something rancid coming from Provenzano's locker. What's going on? Then principal's got to go figure it out. And you open it up and it's like a science experiment, right?
Yeah.
Where you could have gone back in time and just say, hey, guys, give me 30 seconds. Get a paper towel, wipe it up, and it's all good. So a very long-winded visualization for just deal with it, right? And things get better. You said something else, too, where you recognize that, you're a tough football player, but you recognize that you needed to get help, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, you can. You got
it. Right. I think for a lot of people, admitting that they need help or being vulnerable is really hard, but it's one of the most important pieces to being resilient. When you think resilience, you think, oh, be tough, get through it, rub some dirt on it.
Yeah.
But one of the biggest ways to grow resilience is to ask for help and surround yourself with people that have your best interest at hand that can guide you in the right direction.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So one of the things that I admire about you, Nick, is your courage. Again, because you're having this conversation, you're a quiet guy. It's like being on a podcast. But also I've got a story about you when you were a sophomore. I've shared this story before. So folks that aren't football people, bear with us for a second, because the moral of the story is courage. So when Nick was a sophomore, we were scrimmaging against Canandaigua, and this was about 2 years ago. Canandaigua was a really good team. They had a really a championship caliber team. Their defensive line was like the strength of the team. They had a bunch of like 6'3", 220-pound, like they looked like they were 25-year-olds with beards, right?
Yep.
And we were in a scrimmage, and they were manhandling our offensive line. And in a scrimmage setting, like the coaches are in the sideline, they're right behind the play, so they can hear everything that's being said and done. And one of the kids, the best player on the other team, was a real loudmouth. He was throwing, like dominating our offensive line and talking smack. And I remember myself getting annoyed and upset, like, okay, is somebody going to be competitive and shut this kid up, right? All of our offensive linemen couldn't really handle him. And these were seniors, juniors, and Nick was a tight end at that time. So for people listening, he was like 170 pounds probably.
No, I was 180. I wasn't
180, maybe
185.
maybe soaking wet.
Yeah.
But this kid was like probably 230, 240, senior. He's a really good athlete. And Nick, I see him. He wasn't even playing the same position. He's a tight end, which is like kind of like a receiver. And he's like, Coach, put me at tackle, please. Tackle was the position right across from this kid. So I said, okay, thank you. Finally, somebody that wanted a piece of, competing with this kid.
Yeah.
And Nick went in and held his own.
That was a really, really cool time for me. And
so talk to me about that moment of courage where a lot of people that are sophomores and they see their senior teammates getting, beat up by this senior superior athlete. What in your mind said, I want a piece of this. I want to compete with this guy?
Well, usually for someone that like trash talks a lot, that doesn't really last. So I wanted to face him, and I wasn't going to say like, hey, you got to stop. I wanted to show that in my playing. So what I did was I just got lower than him and I hit him so hard, and he was just like, oh dude, like what the heck? And it was just like, it was fun. And it was, it was like, it was just really fun to get after it with him. And yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, it's, again, I think it goes back to your earlier point, like be comfortable being uncomfortable. So it's an uncomfortable concept to say, well, what's the worst that could happen? This guy runs over me and I get embarrassed in front of everybody.
Right. Exactly. And then I go back to being a tight end, which I never did. So, and I'm glad I stayed at the O-line.
Right. So instead of thinking like worst case scenario, think best case. Maybe I, believe in myself and give it everything I got and, hold my own,
Yep.
And you can apply that to any situation in life. If you're not an athlete, maybe it's music, maybe it's a relationship. But take a chance, believe in yourself, and go get after it.
Yep.
And don't be afraid of the worst case scenario. Try to focus on best case scenario.
Yep.
This leads me back to a specific question I have for you, or concept. I know you subscribe to like mental mindset and thinking about your thinking. You called me a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month or two ago, and said, Coach, I'm doing an assignment on focusing on what you can control, right? And I think that speaks to like everything going on right now. People perseverate and worry about things
out of their reach. Yep.
Yeah, and they watch the news every day. They see COVID numbers going up, social unrest in the nation, in the community. All right, and that can be a lot. Or just being overwhelmed with homework, and man, I usually have 80s, and now I have a 60. Just being overwhelmed with life. So, what about that idea of focusing on what you can control is meaningful to you?
So if I were to like ponder on everything out of my reach, I would be very just disappointed and let down like the entire day, the entire week. For example, so over the summer, I was on a baseball team. I played for Grow to Pro. And so like in 8th grade and 9th grade, we were we were pretty solid. We won a couple tournaments, and this year we just completely just fell apart. I would say I think we didn't win. We only won like probably like 6 or 7 games out of 30. So our record was what, 30-25 or something like that. And so in the beginning of the season, like I was just me and my teammate Zach Merlot, we were just upset, and we were upset at the guys because it felt like they didn't want to be there. But I would say halfway through the season, I just said to him, "Look, we can't do anything about the other guys not wanting to get better. We just need to focus on ourselves and try to lead by example by doing what we can do, like hitting off the tee, doing extra throwing practice, like hitting in the cages, just doing things that show the other guys, and like by saying like, hey, look, like we're trying to get better. Do you want to do the same thing or not?" So, and it's completely their choice, but if we want to win, we got to do the things that requires winning.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
A great example. I think that speaks. A lot of people can, even if you don't play baseball, can apply that to their own life. I think what you said at the beginning really stands out. It's if you focus too much on the things out of your control, it's a sad, depressed existence, right?
Yeah,
You dwell on the negatives.
Yeah, and that's all you can't get anything done, and it leads you to procrastinate, and it's sloppy and it's messy and it's just not good.
Absolutely. Well said. And I think the other piece of that is you had a game plan, right? Where it's like, okay, you went from the mindset of I'm not going to focus on the negative. Like these guys don't want as much as I do, but they're still on my team.
Yep.
So how do I make the most of this without creating a toxic situation and just start yelling at them, right?
Yeah.
And instead of just thinking about it, you had a game plan. So you found somebody else that was like-minded, and
Yep.
you started like every day you had a plan. Like we hit the cages, we do this. I think for everybody and for me, my life, having a plan, writing it down, and executing your plan one day, one moment at a time is huge, where it shows you're focusing on that one thing that's right in front of you instead of all the possible things that are out there.
Yeah, that's very, very important. Yep.
Absolutely. One thing I try to do, and I'm working on my children to do this, my whole family, we got a family calendar, right? And usually it's like stuff for the day on there, but I've really worked hard at having the kids write down their goals for the day.
Yeah.
It's funny seeing like 11-year-old, 9-year-old, and Wyatt's 6. You can't even reach the calendar. And my daughters are helping them write it down. Yeah. It's like usually a picture of a dinosaur. It's the whole idea of if you write it down, it's just the you've made a commitment to yourself, right? And you have a focus. And if you like, if you get carried away where you think, well, this assignment's supposed to take me an hour and it's taking me 2 hours because I'm distracted or perseverating and unsure if I should submit it, look at your goals and say, okay, well, I gotta hit the second goal. So this is going to have to be good enough. I got to move on.
Yeah. There's just a lot more clarity when you write something down and you can get it done quicker, like you were saying.
Absolutely. For sure. Anything else, Nicholas? Any questions for me?
Was there a time when you got upset or were disappointed in like controlling what you can control?
Yeah, a lot. I think out of this, for the sake of brevity, and the anybody that is still listening to this conversation, so very similar to you. I was in college playing football, and my senior year in my college career, my whole life was revolved around football. My dad coached, my brothers played, so like when I was a baby and walking, I was playing football.
Yeah.
So senior year in college, similar to you, where my team wasn't good. We went from Division II to Division I, so we were playing at the highest level in the country. But my offense was really good. I played offense. We were scoring 30 points a game, but our defense was very young and overmatched. So we were losing games like 38-35. And I got, similar to you, very upset. It was like the 4th game of the year, and we were 0-4. And I started thinking negative thoughts about we're not going to win a game. getting mad at the younger players on defense because they weren't doing their
Yeah.
jobs.
Yep.
And I started thinking negatively. And I remember vividly, it was after a game at UConn. We were in Connecticut. My parents made the trip. My brother made the trip. My aunt and uncle and my cousins made the trip to the game to support me. After the game, I was so upset about losing and stuck in my own head. I didn't even really talk to them and visit with them because I was being selfish.
Yep.
And my dad let it go in the moment because I was so ticked off, and I was in the locker room. I was crying like a mess,
Yeah.
He sent me a letter like 3 days later. I remember being in my college house. Again, it's weird what you remember. This is 20 years ago. I'm old, but
You're not
I
that
remember
old.
sitting there reading the letter, and he said a few things, but focus on what you can control. And that totally made me upset that I disrespected my family by not talking with them in the moment, but also refocused my energy and mindset to, okay, like you said, I'm going to pick up my younger teammates, try to make them better in practice, and focus on my 111th in football. That's my assignment, right? I'm going to be the best center that I can be, which was my position at the time. And I ended up having a very good year. And the team, we didn't win a game. We finished 0-11. But I found the joy in the struggle and the discomfort, and we had a good time together. So long story, but a very similar concept. But again, even if you're a non-athlete, you can apply the same concept to focus in on the little things one day at a time, write down your goals, and don't let the things fall, let the things drop that you have no control over.
It's like the Beatles song "Let It Be" by Paul McCartney. That's a great song.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Let the things you can't control be, and get after the things that you can't control with a plan, right? Think about it. It's almost even good to separate it, right? You can start writing things down, like make a list of the things that are out of your control, that are in your mind. Make a list of the things that are in control, you have control over, and then make a specific plan for each day to attack those things.
Yeah. Visualizing.
Sorry, go ahead. What?
No, yeah, visualizing and writing things down helps me, and I'm sure it helps a lot of guys out there.
Absolutely. Last question for you. You're a junior, but I really feel for the seniors right now that are missing out on a lot of experiences, whether it's play, musical, band concerts, sports, games, seasons. And I've got I'm in a Minerva DeLand freshmen that are struggling with high school. Their first year in high school is a COVID year where going from middle school is hard to high school because it counts. The grades count. The work is harder.
Yeah.
So they're experiencing that, but they're trying to do it 2 days a week in school and 3 days at home. So it's even harder. So what advice would you give a senior that's stressed out or depressed about missing out on experiences? And similarly, a freshman that's struggling through their first year of high school, being a weird COVID year that's kind of overwhelming.
Okay, for the seniors out there, I would say it's kind of hard to be focused on like your classes and stuff, but I feel like a lot of you guys are going to miss your teachers. And when you're there at school, appreciate the time that your teachers are giving to you and that are trying to teach you, because they love you guys and it's really special. And I think that if you made a connection with a lot of your teachers, you would be a lot happier. I know there's not that much to do otherwise, but if you make connections with your teachers, it's really special. And for the freshmen, that's kind of tough because the transition from 8th to 9th grade for me was, 8th and 9th grade was probably my 2 best years, and I can't really imagine how it would be at Minerva. But the same thing, like if you're having a tough time getting your grades up and you're feeling overwhelmed, go talk to your teachers. Go talk to Mr. Monticelli. He would love to talk to you. Just don't be. I know coming from me, don't be quiet. It really does help if you get your voice out and try to connect with your teachers and other people your age too.
I couldn't have said it better myself, Nick. Very concise, but so powerful. Again, this speaks to everything we talked about, comes back to the same common thread, like hitting it head on, like addressing whatever the solution, the problem solving is, right? Trying to address it instead of letting it sit and procrastinating, and just trusting and building relationships with people and reaching out to them for help, right? Say, hey, I'm struggling.
It just makes it so much easier if you have a good connection with the teacher, and instead of just like saying, hey, I need help. It's like if you talk to him or her before, they'd be able to help you even more because they know what's going on in your life.
For sure. Let's say you got somebody that doesn't have a good connection with a teacher. What would you advise them to do?
I'm sure we can edit this part out.
It's all good. It's all good.
Let's see.
The same rule applies. They need to reach out to somebody. So let's say they don't see eye to eye with a specific teacher. Who could they reach out to?
They can reach out to a friend, and that friend can then help them get them connected to maybe a counselor or a teacher. I don't know. Yeah.
Absolutely. Perfect. Sorry to put you on the spot, but you did great. You hit a home run.
Thanks.
100%. You got to surround yourself with people in general that have your best interest at heart.
If you're getting home, if you're going home and immediately going to your room, nothing good will happen. And I've learned that from experience. Over the shutdown, isolation is pretty tough on your brain. So try not to be isolated that much.
Absolutely. Reach out to somebody, whether it's in person. If you can't do that through a screen like this, we're having a great conversation using technology, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, Nicholas, I appreciate your voice and having a conversation with you as always, and putting yourself out there once again, demonstrating some courage to put yourself out there. And if for the few people that listen to this, I'm sure they're going to take value in hearing your perspective because it's very meaningful. Even you made a difference for me today, so I appreciate that.
Thank you for having me on. It was really special.
My pleasure. Have a great day. And Raider Nation, have a great day. Focus on what you can control, one day at a time. Make a plan. Take care, everybody.